Barry Franklin, welcome.
Thank you.
This is part of the ACSM Distinguished Leaders program that we're videotaping, and we've done about 40 of these, so appreciate you joining us.
It's my pleasure.
We're here in Seattle. Barry's going to be our honor award recipient tonight, and congratulations on that as well.
Thank you so much, Jack.
And so I just wanted to start with where you're at now at Beaumont, and what you do there, and then maybe drop back as to how you got there. I know it was a long journey, but one of the interesting things is sort of the careers that people in the college have done and are doing, and how they got there, and how they got where they found the American College of Sports Medicine. So maybe sort of what you're doing now, Barry. And
Well, currently I serve as the Director of Cardiac Rehabilitation and Exercise Labs at William Beaumont Hospital. It's Royal Oak, Michigan. I've been there since 1985. Love what I do. I work really with people who have cardiovascular disease, so we're working on a day-to-day basis with people who've had heart attacks, bypass surgery, heart transplants. Our program involves comprehensive education, counseling, exercise is an integral component. We're working very closely with clinical cardiologists on a day-to-day basis.
So these are all referrals?
That's exactly correct. These are all patients who refer to the program. And clinical care is number one, but number two is research. So we're certainly very interested and have been a major research player in cardiac rehabilitation for many years now.
So you're collecting data then too, in all these patients and...
That is correct. We look at cardiovascular risk factor profiles. We look at hypertension, hypercholesterolemia. Are they cigarette smokers? Are they obese? Are they diabetic? And we're looking at how we can modify those risk factors over time. And I personally believe what we're doing in preventive cardiology is a very hot area, equally, if not more important than all the revascularization, all the angioplasty and bypass surgery that's going on at a big cost.
How many programs are like this throughout the United States?
Well, in U.S. and Canada, we estimate there are 2,500 to 3,000 cardiac rehabilitation programs. And I think people look at it and they say, if you really want a comprehensive cardiology program, you got to do more than just take people right after bypass surgery or angioplasty. You got to work with them throughout the remainder of their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that this was sort of a radical idea. You know, in the 50s.
You're exactly right.
A person's had a heart attack, for heaven's sakes.
You're exactly right. And it was pioneers, like one of the guys I work with, the late Herman Hellerstein, a cardiologist in Cleveland, who really showed that people can have heart attacks and they can oftentimes resume normal lifestyles, they can exercise, they can improve their fitness. And in many cases, Jack, we got people with heart problems who are living longer than their counterparts who don't have any heart. We have a lot of guys 70, 80, and 90 years of age, men and women in our program.
Wow.
So it's exciting.
Or what was his name in Boston? White, the cardiologist.
Paul Dudley White.
Paul Dudley White. I mean,
world renowned.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I remember when Eisenhower had his heart attack, and White said, get him out of bed.
That's exactly right. Although for many years we thought, you know, if you have a heart attack, you should stay still for the next six to 8 weeks. That's exactly right. And there are two guys, Lown and Levine, who really basically showed that if you get people up moving day 2, day 3 after a heart attack, they actually have a better prognosis. They got out of the hospital faster.
Yes. Well, so how did you get in this business?
Oh, it's really been a dream in many respects. I got interested in the whole field. Being an undergraduate in physical education at Kent State University, where I had exposure to two terrific professors who I know you know, Larry Golding and Paul Ribisel. So those guys got me started. I was a gymnast in college. I worked still rings, high bar.
That iron cross.
I worked, so that got me interested, and they were dunking me underwater and putting me on a treadmill and so on and so forth. And I decided, wow, my life's goal is to get a master's degree in exercise science. Went to Michigan, worked under a guy by the name of Merle Foss, who was a student of Charlie Tipton. And then from there, went to the big house, went to work with Buzz Kirk, State of Falk, Jim Skinner, and people like that at Penn State. Exactly.
I didn't know you were at Penn State.
Got my Ph.D. at Penn State, and the guy that really turned me on to the college was, Merle Foss encouraged me to join the college in 1970, which I did, and then Carl Stadefalk, who I met at Penn State, said, I'm going to send a few of my graduate students to a retreat to get your certification
Did you go to Colorado?
I did go to Colorado. I worked with Bruno Balke
Yeah.
and Neil Oldridge and
Wow.
Loring Brock. This was in the 70s, and was one of the first groups to ever get an exercise specialist, and then I was hooked. I found out what ACSM was all about and really got very, very active, and I've been doing certifications ever since.
This is quite a pedigree. No wonder you're getting the honor.
Well, yeah, so it goes back a lot of years, and I've had exposure to terrific people like the Balkes, like the Hellersteins, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my hometown is Lewistown, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
which is 23 miles from Penn State. So
Okay.
I knew all about Penn State from just a little, and they have a great group over there.
They certainly
have.
You know what blows my mind is the fact that when I was at Penn State in the 70s, there was a guy by the name of Joe Paterno, who was the football coach, who's still there. Right. So it goes to show you what you can do when you get older, and you can still be pretty sufficient and pretty productive in your 80s.
Exactly.
So.
Well, so everybody you worked with, going back to Kent State, were they in ACSM at the time? Paul?
I think Paul and Larry, I think, were involved in ACSM. Merle Foss got me to join, as I said, in 1970.
And that was when you were a grad student?
I was working on a master's degree at the time.
Yeah, before you went to Penn State?
Before I went to Penn State.
Okay.
Yeah, at Michigan, I was running rats on treadmills and injecting them with steroids and looking at muscle function. And I enjoyed it, but I decided after a year or two, I'm not an animal researcher. I want to get into human stuff. Penn State had the program. I was fortunate enough that Buskirk allowed me to work in his lab, and the rest is history.
What did you do your dissertation on then?
There was, in the 70s, early 70s, there was the misconception that women weren't as trainable as men, that women didn't show the same magnitude of improvements in VO2 max and so on and so forth. But as I looked at it, and as Dr. Buskirk looked at it, we said, you know, a lot of these studies really haven't pushed women to the same extent. If you really do a vigorous exercise program, can you show the same changes? And ours was the first study, my dissertation, to show that women are in fact as trainable as men. They show the same improvements in cardiac output, VO2, body composition, blood lipids, and so on and so forth. So that's what we looked at.
What year was that?
1976 is when I graduated Penn State.
Wow, okay. I wonder if Barbara's going to talk about that today.
That's, I suppose, very possible.
I bet she will.
Yeah.
So now I remember, I think it was lacrosse doing a lot of the early cardiovascular work and rehab, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you get associated with them at all, or is that just a whole separate program?
No, I actually did. I developed a good relationship with a guy by the name of Phil Wilson, who's
Oh,
now
yes.
retired, but Phil was with the American College of Sports
Sure.
Medicine for many years, so I did a number of workshops with the University of Wisconsin
wonder.
lacrosse.
Okay.
And, of course, met some terrific people along the way, including the late Mike Pollock, who had a
Yes.
profound influence on my career, and have really worked in hospitals and with cardiologists my entire career.
And so back to where you are now, how long have you been at Beaumont?
Since 1985.
Okay.
So it's been a nice run.
Are your referrals only Beaumont patients, or would they come from anywhere?
I'd
How
say,
would that
Jack,
work?
probably 85–90% are Beaumont referring docs, but 10–15%. A lot of times people come into our program and they say, we've heard about your cardiac rehab program, even though I'm at a different hospital, how do I get involved? So if they get a primary care physician to refer them, we can take them into the program.
Okay. I talk about William Beaumont's research in my history of medicine class.
For digestion,
Yeah,
you're talking
the
about.
little hole we had in there,
with
the
fistula.
gastric fistula. And,
Sure.
And when I talk about it, the students can't believe that someone was doing that at the time. But,
Well, his work was so pioneering that the founders of our hospital decided to name the hospital after him. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I ask everyone is sort of what the college means to them and what it's meant for their career, and I think I know the answer to this, but I wondered if you could just comment a little, going back to when Carl Stadefeld said, hey, let's submit this, was it abstract or
Well,
whatever?
Carl said, I'm going to send 3 of you guys
Oh,
to
to them,
Aspen, Colorado to study with Bruno Balke. Of course, we got there the first day, and he said, tomorrow you guys are going to do the 15-minute run for time at altitude. That was my initial exposure, but I got so hooked on ACSM certification and what it's all about, I started volunteering for committees and so on and so forth. And I got to tell you, it's almost 40 years now as a member, and I never dreamed, Jack, of the leadership, the learning opportunities that I'd have working with a professional organization like the ACSM. And as a result, I tell all my students, if I'm going to offer you any single bit of advice, it's join the college, and not just join, but get active. Don't just go to a meeting, present a poster at the meeting, and so on and so forth. And over the years, I've been very fortunate to be involved in, I've lectured all around the world as a result of my affiliation with the college. I've been chairing board meetings, committee meetings, served on strategic planning task force, working very closely with Jim Whitehead and a number of others. Had the privilege of serving as president as well as president of the ACSM Foundation. Had the opportunity to do the guidelines, ACSM guidelines for great exercise testing and training.
That is what, 8th or 9th edition?
It was the black book. I think it was the sixth. It was the sixth edition. I think it was the sixth.
Talk about longevity.
Yeah. So it was just it's been a terrific run.
Yeah. Gee. Now, so you get to work even though you're in a hospital. You get to still work with students.
Absolutely.
And how does that work?
We have an internship program.
I see.
And that internship program is great because all the academic studies in the world, you can look at it at the books, but when you're really working with patients in the real world, I mean, when I was at Penn State as a graduate student, if somebody had a PVC, a premature ventricular contraction on their EKG, 8 of us would stand around it with a magnifying glass looking at it in awe. I see PVCs every day in a clinical setting. So it really does pay to do an internship program and get that clinical experience. So we have students going through our place all the time.
And what kind of students are there? I mean, are these all students from like the lacrosse program, for instance, or could they be exercise physiology students, or is it students that are coming here to basically learn to do cardiac rehab?
It's the latter for the most part, but we also see people who have a background in exercise science and want to get some clinical internship. In many courses, in many curriculum, it's required to do a 3-month internship in a clinical setting where people are evaluated. And I'll also share with you that 82% of our staff over the years have been students who were finishing up their internship, and we said, wow, this student is really bright. They know our staff, they know our patients, they're looking for an entry job, and we've ended up hiring a good percentage of those people, 82%.
Wow, that's amazing. And they've all done well, I'm sure.
Knock on wood.
Right. So you may be getting students then that really don't know about ACSM.
A very small percentage. I'd say the vast majority know about it, and if I have my way in teaching and tutoring them, I would simply say, this is the single best thing you can do in your entire career, is to get active and involved in ACSM. It gives you something to work for that's bigger than you are. And that is, to me, as you look at ACSM members, there's a passion or a crusade that we have in terms of improved health, wellness, fitness, and it really has enriched my life immeasurably.
Now, you were talking about data collection and so forth. Over the years, do you feel you've had the opportunity to publish a lot of material, or are you sort of stuck, not in a bad way, but just on a day-to-day seeing patients? I mean, do you get the time to be able to write and publish and things like that? Or
yeah, the answer is yes, because an expectation, at least in my job, when they hired me, was we're looking for a physiologist to develop outstanding clinical and research programs and, quote, to put this place on the map. And one way you put a place on a map, as you well know, is getting your people out there, hosting workshops, publishing, presenting, and so on and so forth. So my hospital has always been very, very supportive of saying, hey, you're going to present at ACSM, that's great, we support you. Or American Heart, or wherever we're going.
Right, yeah. So that brings me to another question. You probably had strong relationships with other organizations besides ACSM. Isn't there a group for cardiac rehab, forgot what it's called now.
AACVPR,
yes.
American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehab, yes.
And you've been president of that, too.
Yes, I was president of that. I'm also very involved with the American Heart Association nationally, and was president of the Midwest affiliate, which is 11 states. So I'm really hooked on association involvement. ACSM is #1. It's the longest, but certainly you meet different people in heart in AACVPR, and it's been a wonderful opportunity for me.
Russ Pate earlier this morning was actually suggesting that it was the American Heart Association's sort of grabbing on to physical activity in the early 90s that really helped propel a lot of further interest in physical activity, that it was significant that the American Heart Association realized the relationship between physical activity and cardiovascular disease. And I'm wondering if you were probably involved in one or the other group at that right around 90 or so when that was taking place.
You're exactly right, and Russ is exactly right, working with Russ over the years, but there have been pioneers like the late Herman Hellerstein, like Nanette Wenger, who's still alive, like John Naughton, who were active, involved like Sam Fox, Bill Haskell. Those are all names that have been actively involved with ACSM as well as American Heart. And in fact, this latest paper that Bill Haskell spearheaded that appeared in Circulation last year was jointly sponsored by ACSM and American Heart. So those are the kinds of collaborations that I think are great. They're win-win. When you get two associations behind a paper or a statement, it affects far more people, has greater influence.
Okay, well, anyhow, I see we're sort of, I told you it would go fast.
Wow, okay.
So anyhow, I wanted to thank you, Barry, for stopping and talking, and again, congratulations on your honor award tonight. I wouldn't miss it, and I'm happy that it's happening here in Seattle.
Thanks so much,
where
Jack.
the sun is actually shining.
Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thanks.